Well, today's video update about my home, which is owned by God, and I'm looking after it for him. Let's talk about that and Bank of Scotland's fraudulent claim and the mess they've got themselves into, and all the legal points. Bank of Scotland brought a claim naming my person, Tobe Hayden Lee, as the defendant in the proceedings for possession of both my properties in July 2022. Now that proceeded, went to court, and a possession order was granted for both the properties. Now, interestingly, in the proceedings, Greville Healy, the barrister for Bank of Scotland, when I objected and stated the Bank of Scotland haven't got the local standard to bring the claim against anyone because they haven't proven the whole of the security, because I've got evidence and proof that it's been securitised and sold on and on, but that's quite complex, so I won't go into that too much. He made a statement saying that I didn't have any standing to defend the claim because I was bankrupt. Now, had I known what I know now, back then, Greville Healy was 100% correct. Because back in 2015, this is going to chop about a little bit, 2015 there was a bankruptcy order issued against Tobe Lee by Screwfix, which is illegal in itself for matters, that's another video to go into, but let's just stay with that. So the bankruptcy was against Tobe Lee, who didn't have any assets. The trustees in bankruptcy was appointed, so at that point the whole estate was then passed over to the trustees in bankruptcy. So Tobe Lee didn't no longer have any standing, any rights of audience, because everything that was vested to Tobe Lee, which then got converted to Tobe Hayden Lee, like I say, it's another video, was all under the control of the trustees in bankruptcy. So at that point, any mortgages, etc., my understanding is should have been discharged, because everything is under the power and the control of the trustees in bankruptcy. We'll skip a few years out because it's not really important for this video with where I'm going with it. So before they bought the possession application, the bank wrote to the trustees in bankruptcy on the 11th of March 2022, asking them whether they wanted to be a joint party to the proceed. Did they object to the possession application, and did they want to be joint party to the proceedings? The trustees in bankruptcy wrote back to them and said, no, we don't object to the possession application, and we don't want to be joint party to the proceedings. However, we have disclaimed 39 Glebe Lane, but we still have an interest in 476 Tunbridge Road. So on the basis of that, the trustees wrote a notice of disclaimation to disclaim 39 Glebe Lane. They sent it into to TLT, and then TLT wrote to the Crown Estates, Burgess Salmon, and said, we understand that the 39 Glebe Lane is subject to the Crown Estates being deemed subject to a sheet. We're bringing a claim against the properties. Do you want to object to the application, and do you want to be joint party to the proceedings? The Crown Estates wrote back and said, we haven't seen any evidence that the 39 Glebe Lane is subject to a sheet and it's been deemed to the Crown. Can you provide us the evidence? We don't object to the application for possessions, but then we also don't oppose. We don't oppose it, and we have got no view on it. Basically, they also said that they couldn't confirm whether the claim, the validity of their claim. So TLT sent over the notice of disclaimation to them, and the Crown Estates wrote back basically saying, we don't want nothing to do with it, and we can't clarify whether you've got a valid claim or not. So now, technically at this point, sorry, one bit I missed out. TLT when they wrote to the Crown Estates, they asked them to sign this documentation to say that they don't oppose and they don't want to be joint party to the proceedings, and they needed that confirmation from the Crown Estates so they could formally and properly constitute the claim. Well, the Crown Estates never signed anything. The trustees in bankruptcy never signed anything. So TLT knew full well that the Crown Estates didn't hold title. It wasn't. They said it may be subject to be deemed to a sheet, but they didn't say it was. So now you've got the trustees in bankruptcy that have disclaimed 39 Glebe Lane, allegedly, and they've said it's down to the Crown Estates. The Crown Estates saying that it isn't with them. So you've got the title, which is what all it is. It's not the property, it's not the bricks and mortar, it's not the postcode, certainly, because what they've gone for possession for is the address and postcode, which isn't the land. That's another fraud. Post office, we're going to another time. So the title is in no man's land. It's floating. There's got no one to tie it to. Now, had the Bank of Scotland or the trustees in bankruptcy got the property vested back to me or my person, then the Bank of Scotland would have had a valid claim against me. But as it stands, the trustees in bankruptcy, when they notified TLT that they've disclaimed the property to TLT, they never notified the Crown Estates and they never notified the Land Registry. It was in fact only me that notified the Land Registry of the disclamation, because when I received the possession application bundle, I saw the notice of disclamation. And obviously, because of this bullshit bankruptcy has been going on since 2015, I sent an application into the Land Registry to get the property revested to me. And they said that they couldn't vest it back to me. It needs to be done by a court order, which shows that the trustees in bankruptcy should have gone to court and got an order of somewhat, or notified the court, or notified the Land Registry, certainly, and the Crown Estates that they'd disclaimed the property. But all they'd done was notify TLT. So as it stands, on the Land Registry, it's still Anne Nielsen, Edward Thomas and Anne Nielsen of Mazars, LLP, that are the registered proprietors in bankruptcy for Tobe Hayden Lee. So then we bring it back to the claim form. So Tobe Hayden Lee was named the defendant in these proceedings, but in their world, Tobe Hayden Lee, or Tobe Lee, is bankrupt. So Tobe Hayden Lee hasn't got anything to give. So this possession orders against Tobe Hayden Lee to give possession of 39 Glebe Lane to Bank of Scotland. Well, if I don't hold the title, the legal title for the property or the rights and interest because they're with the trustee, how can I give possession of something that isn't in my control or power to give? And if the title is not being claimed by anyone, it's not vested to anyone, then there is no one to hold it. So the correct name of the parties that should have been on the possession application should have been, I say, for 476 Tunbridge Road, it should have been the trustees in bankruptcy as the defendant, and for 39 Glebe Lane, it should have been the Crown Estates, not me. So the whole claim is fundamentally fatally flawed from the beginning, because they haven't identified the correct part, the proper identifying the proper named parties. So the claim is invalid. Greville Healy was right. I didn't have any standing to defend it, so therefore it shouldn't have proceeded. But then, even so, therefore their claim is invalid. Everything they've done from that point, from putting the claim in, everything that's happened thereafter is irrelevant. I've got more rights to be on that property for being there for 49 years than them people sitting on the driveway. Because even if it has been deemed back to the Crown, or it's in no man's land at the moment, then I'm looking after I'm one of God's people, and I'm looking after the land for God. God owns all the land. God owns everything. You'll own nothing and be happy, because you can't own anything. It's only the fiction, the legal fiction, the character that gets registered to it. But whose is it to sell? But anyway, that's a whole new can of worms. But let's just keep it legal and on point in the legal world. So the other thing is that they've, under the County Courts Act 1984, section 21(3), it clearly states that for a mortgage repossession, for a possession of property, it can only be dealt with by the county court. So there is no way in law for them to transfer it to High Court enforcement, to be able to come and do what they've done. And certainly isn't any law that states that they can use violence to secure entry, i.e. petrol cutter through the side gate and it's smashing through the double glazed rear window. There's no law that states they can do that. It's only peaceful possession for mortgage residential domestic dwellings. So that's illegal and fraud. So they've used violence to secure entry, which is Section 6 of the Criminal Law Act 1977. That's a breach of that. Because I'm a displaced residential occupier from the property, because bearing in mind the mortgage is still on that property, it's still in the name Tope Hayden Lee at 39 Glebe Lane. So I'm a displaced residential occupier because I've been there for 49 years. So because I've asked them to leave, they're in breach of Section 7 of the Criminal Law Act 1977. But then also, like they've mentioned about tenants, there's Tope Hayden Lee and persons unknown, and also at the other property they allege they don't know who's there, so that's gone down as persons unknown. So they know it's a buy-to-let, the other property, and so they know there's tenants there. So tenants have got rights. And I posted up yesterday about the law. What is there's zero discretion. It has to be done, and that is to send the notices out to the occupants, residents, people living in the houses. They've got to follow that, to notify them, to give them the opportunity. None of that's been followed. Every single law in the book has been broken. So I've highlighted this to TLT and to the bank and to the parties. They can't sell something they don't own. It's been disclaimed. It's sitting in no man's land. I wasn't the correct defendant. So where they're going to go with this, they can't. They need to have a man or an individual person tied to the property to then transfer it, because you can't sell something that you're not in possession of. And if the title is sitting in no man's land, then how can you transfer it? Unless they're all in on it together and just breaking the law. But they are breaking all the law. I've highlighted a lot of it in my videos. So that's a bit of an update of what's going on. Come on, Ted. That's a bit of an update of where it's at the moment. And I think they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. They're going to continue breaking the laws? I don't know. Is the Crown Estates, Burgess Salmon in on this as well? I know certainly TLT know that the bankruptcy is all fraudulent and void, because the bankruptcy order was against Tope Lee and not Tope Hayden Lee. Tope Lee didn't have any assets, Tope Hayden Lee did. Obviously the properties, and under the Insolvency Act you can't make someone bankrupt that's solvent. And bankruptcy can't be used as a tool to coerce money from someone. For a figure of 2,100 quid on the statutory demand, and the bankruptcy petition was 3,137 quid, which is more than what they could prove that was allegedly owned, to go straight for bankruptcy is in breaching insolvency rules, because there's other courses of action, i.e. bailiffs, charging order on the property, and the sheer fact that the debt was settled within 7 days of finding out. The bankruptcy is just a whole new mess. But the trustees in bankruptcy know about this. So the trustees in bankruptcy are completely complicit through trying to steal assets by registering the properties in their name, when there is not a bankruptcy order in existence for Mr. Tope Hayden Lee. So yeah, it's a tangled web that covers many laws, and that's in the legal realm. But like I say, if we strip it back to bare basics and we go into the person and the birth certificated character, and under God's law and the gospel, all property is owned by God. No one owns it. We're just here as life tenants looking after it, because when we go, it all goes back. So what happens next? Keep following. It's exciting. There is one more thing I wanted to say. Come on, Ted, back this way. Is that what I'm uncovering and what I'm exposing here is massive. I'm being targeted here because they're trying to make an example of me, because the documentation they're relying upon to come and violently take the properties across the country, which I've been doing for years, is illegal, because they're using high court enforcement and they can't. So what I'm opening up here, and it's going to set to set a precedent, which is why they're trying to do everything they can to stop me, is because it's sort of David and Goliath. You're taking on Goliath, obviously the banks, but this is going to stop their way of life. But for them continuing proceeding with taking properties with these fraudulent writs, because it can only be peaceful possession for mortgage properties, and it can only be done by a warrant of possession. There is no warrant of possession. They never applied for a warrant of possession. I emailed them, asked them, and they said no, they didn't. They just went straight for High Court enforcement, which was allowed by the county court. Because just because it's common practice doesn't mean to say it's legal or lawful. So what this has got the potential to do is to open up a massive can of worms that's bring a stop to these possessions for across the country, of them being able to use these fraudulent High Court writs with bailiffs, with High Court enforcement, taking properties with no right to do so. And this sets a precedent. Then this doesn't just stop everything going forward and make sure they follow the law, but it'll also give people recourse and remedy for anyone that's lost their property by using the same methodology what they've used with me and many others. Because if people have had their property taken with High Court enforcement with no right to do so, then people are going to be able to go back and get remedy. So it's a lot bigger than me. This is a lot bigger than me, and I'm just shining a very bright light on the truth. That's all I'm trying to do, is expose the criminality and the fraud, out and out fraud and corruption. So yeah, that was the other bit I wanted to get in. So enjoy your day. Oh yeah, they've nicked my postbox, by the way. They've ripped the door off the postbox, I got told, of me letterbox, so I don't get mail going there, to try and stop me from going there. So I'll have to get a new mailbox put up soon. But that's 17 minutes of your time taken. Have a good day, and stay positive. Peace, love, happiness.